Good morning and welcome back, students. I hope you all are fine. Yesterday we have concluded our chapter in alchemy. You please open the book. Those who don't have the book, please go through the video. Okay, open page number 2. Converting cheaper metals into gold. Okay, yesterday we have stopped in this point. Broadly, Alchemist had the following two aims. First one, I told you, converting cheaper metals into gold. Gold has been generally valued by human beings ever since it was discovered. It was first found as nuggets in some rocks, but rarely. So, alchemists made attempts to convert baser metals like iron and copper into gold, because gold it was too costly. That's why alchemists tried the cheaper metals like iron and copper metal to convert into gold. They tried for centuries and some claimed they had succeeded. They tried their level best, but some claimed that they had succeeded. And they believed that their success was due to the use of what they are called philosopher's stone. Later, all these claims were proved false. The alchemists failed because their attempts were scientifically wrong. You will learn in later chapter that one metal cannot be converted into another. That's why the alchemists failed. Their attempts were scientifically wrong. However, these experiments were useful in an important way. They helped develop the art of extracting new metals. The Indians had extracted iron much before this period. The quality of Indian iron and steel was well known. Have you seen the iron pillar near the Qutb Minar in Delhi? Yes, maybe everybody have seen. It was made in the 4th century AD. The 24-foot high pillar has been exposed to rain and storm since then. Yes, it shows no sign of rusting. Till now, it shows no sign of rusting. This is because the iron it is made of is very pure. Alchemists believed in second point, searching for the elixir of life. They searched the elixir of life. Human beings have always wanted to live long. Okay, everybody wants to live long. So, alchemists searched for the elixir of life. Elixir is an imaginary liquid that would cure all diseases and help a person live long. Elixir, just to mark it, is an important word for you and a new word for you. Elixir is an imaginary liquid. It is an imaginary liquid that would cure all diseases and help a person live long. and the elixir of life would make a person immortal. Alchemists were made many experiments to find out the elixir. Experiments were made for many centuries, obviously without success. Here the points come. Why alchemy failed? The very basics of alchemy were incorrect. Alchemists accepted the ancient, means 4th century BC, Greek belief that everything is made up of the 4 substances: earth, fire, air and water. They believed in Greek belief. Everything is made up of the 4 substances: earth, fire, air and water. And no substances could be simpler than these 4, which were called elements. The alchemists tried to prepare substances of their choice by using these elements. The alchemists tried to prepare substances of their choice by using these elements. From the 17th century onwards, scientists began to discover substances simpler than these 4. The 4-element theory was disproved. This was the origin of modern chemistry. Now we will discuss about the beginning of modern chemistry. In the later half of the 18th century AD, Lavoisier found that a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen explodes when ignited and water drops are formed. Thus, Lavoisier proved that water itself is made of still simpler substances, hydrogen and oxygen. So, water is not an element. Water is not an element. It was the belief of alchemists. Water was an element. Instead, hydrogen and oxygen could be. Lavoisier found that water is not an element. Oxygen had been prepared earlier by Priestley, but was identified by Lavoisier. Oxygen had been prepared earlier by Priestley, but was identified by Lavoisier. Thus, modern chemistry is believed to have begun with Lavoisier in the 18th century. However, many scientists consider modern chemistry to have begun in the 17th century AD itself, as Robert Boyle had prepared hydrogen then, although Lavoisier identified it as an element a century later. Several elements were discovered thereafter. Several elements discovered. Today, the number is 115 and so. To name a few: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, sulfur, iron, copper, silver, gold, etc., etc., etc. More than 115 elements discovered till now. When 2 more elements combine together, a compound is formed. When 2 or more elements combine together, a compound is formed. For example, hydrogen combines with oxygen to form the compound water. From the name of a compound, quite often you can identify the elements it is made up of. For example, table salt is sodium chloride. Table salt is sodium chloride. Don't forget this name. Table salt which we are using, its chemical name is sodium chloride. Can you guess that it is made of elements sodium and chlorine? You will come across many such examples while studying chemistry. Now we will discuss the point classification of elements. By the 19th century, a large number of elements had been discovered. A many number of elements had been discovered by the 19th century. As the number increased, scientists found it is difficult to systematically study the elements. No systematic study was possible unless the elements were arranged properly. Thus, it became necessary for scientists to classify the elements. Classification involves keeping similar things together and dissimilar things apart. Classification involves keeping similar things together and dissimilar things apart. A simple example of classification can be found in your school. An example I will give you. Children reading the same set of books sit together in a class, and those reading different sets of books sit in different classes. This is a good example of classification. Many scientists all over the world tried to classify the elements. Among them, the Russian scientist Mendeleev was the most successful. The later half of the 19th century, he presented the periodic table of elements. Mendeleev presented the periodic table of elements. You can have a look at the modern form of the periodic table here. I will show you. Sorry, it is in a vertical way. Then also you please go through it. This diagram is in your book. Okay, please go through it. Many elements, symbols are there, atomic numbers are there. Okay, modern periodic table of elements. Similar elements are arranged in the same column called a group, and there are 18 such columns in periodic table. Mendeleev arranged very systematically the periodic table, whole elements. Okay, today we are going to wind up the class. Have a nice day.